This cinematic falling man animation was built entirely inside of After Effects, and it looks really impressive. So in this masterclass, I'll show you how to recreate it completely from scratch. First, we're going to teach you guys how to make a dynamic background with these projections. Then we're going to show you guys how to create a falling stickman animation and add a particle system to it. And lastly, we're even going to teach you guys how to use camera movements and post-productions to turn this into a cinematic masterpiece. All the project files are going to be linked down below so that you guys can follow along. And if you're a video editor who enjoys creating these kinds of high quality animations, you'll find 300 more video editing courses on creating animations just like these inside of Ultimate Editors. The link is going to be down below. But with all this being said, enough talking, let's dive right into animating. One of the best places you can always start with complex animations is the background. And if we pay attention to the background we use here, it's actually very interesting. In order to create this background inside of After Effects, we first have to right click and add in a new solid layer. To go ahead and color this, we're going to add in a 4-color gradient. First of all, let's go ahead and set all of these colors to a black color. Then we're just going to place one of these points in the top over here, and we're just going to spread the rest of these points throughout the background at the bottom here. Now for the point at the top, which seems to be color 1, I'm simply just going to use a green, and for the rest of these, I'm simply going to vary between gray, light gray, and dark gray. Now once this is done, if we increase the blend, we should get something like this. Let's first start by adding a bit more realism to this background, and we're going to do this by adding in a texture. Now we're just going to drag this texture into After Effects. Let's go ahead and scale it proportionally, and by simply changing the blending mode to something like screen, we should start to see a better result. Now if we go ahead and drop its opacity until it's barely noticeable, this should add a bit more realism to our background. I'm going to go ahead and go with 15% opacity. We're going to right click and add in a new solid. On the solid, we're adding in the fractal noise effect. Now let's just go ahead and set the fractal type to something like swirly, which should be good enough. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it as it is for now, but I'm going to right click and add in a new solid on top of this. This time I'm going to be adding in the 4-color gradient once again and setting all of these to the green color that is in the middle. Now this being said, we're going to play around with these to have lighter values and some darker values and some more yellowish values, and we're going to increase the blend all the way. Now all that we have to do is place this solid under our fractal noise solid and then simply track matte it to the fractal noise. Now nothing's going to happen unless we click this button right over here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select my fractal type and go ahead and set it down to subscale. And it's pretty bright right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and tone down the brightness until we can't really see it much. I also don't like the fact that it's very green, so I'm just going to tone down the contrast until it's a relatively flat color. Now with this done, we also have to tone down the brightness just down enough until we could barely see it. And when you could barely see it, if we play around with our evolution settings, you guys can see this creates a very cool cloud effect. So I'm going to go ahead and keyframe my current evolution here, go to the 20-second mark, and I'm just going to give it a few rotations. All right, now when we watch this back, we should be able to see that this background is slightly moving. You can always adjust minor details over here to make it more realistic or give it more life, but this should be pretty good for now. And now with this pretty dynamic background in here, we can finally move on to our next part, which is creating that projection. All we got to do is right click and add in a new shape layer. Now using my shape layer, I'm going to click on my pen tool and I'm just going to draw out the projection shape. Now how do you make sure that you draw these in the perfect center without missing a beat? An easy way to do this is to click down here and turn on our proportion grid. And now we can just go from the center point over here. We'll draw 1 point up here, 1 point over here. Then we're going to go ahead and draw 1 point over here, and then finally reunite it back up over here. Now to actually create that projecting light, all we got to do is head over to effects and presets and drag in our gradient ramp. Now we're simply going to change the start of the ramp to the bright green color that we want and the end of the ramp to a dark black color. Now obviously this is too strong, so we're going to go ahead and play around with this to make it look a lot better. So for our main green color, I'm just going to be using this slightly yellowish green, and I'm probably going to be using a lighter white color. We're going to select that shape layer, change the blending mode into screen. And one of the problems I've got over here is that the shape is really not that appealing. So I can always just scale this thing down. Now I'm actually going to go down here into my path one more time, and I'm simply going to extend these points all the way down to here. One other thing that I don't like is just the fact that the edges are so rough, and so to make this better, we're just going to be adding in the Gaussian blur effect on top of the shape layer. And the more we increase this, the better the edges are going to look. Now obviously I just want to increase this enough so that the edges are well blended in, which is something like that. And if you get the dark edges at the top, then all you got to do is just simply move it to the top a little bit until those dark edges don't show through. And now one more problem that I am facing is just the fact that this thing still looks relatively dull. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the deep glow effect on top of everything, and this is really going to make it look like a projection. Let's go ahead and increase the blurriness just a bit more so that those edges fade in. Now let's go ahead and go down to our deep glow values, and I'm actually going to leave the exposure as it is because it is relatively bright. But let's go down to chromatic aberration acceleration and go ahead and enable it. Now, you don't want to add too much of this because it's going to look bad, but I do want to add something that is noticeable. Now, obviously, as you guys can tell by the animation, this isn't the only projection that's going to be there. There's actually going to be 2 others in the background. So let's go ahead and work on those. We're going to simply duplicate this shape layer. We're going to go to the bottom shape layer over here. We'll go ahead and open it up right here. And this second projection that's behind our main one needs to be slightly bigger. The main thing I am going to do is go ahead and open up my contents, my shape, and my path. I'm going to extend these top 2 points just a tiny bit. And then I'm going to extend these bottom 2 points quite a bit. Now, the problem is this second projection is not actually supposed to be this bright. All we got to do is just change the start color to something slightly darker. And we're simply going to tone down the exposure of the deep glow to 0.5. Now, for our final shape layer, we're going to duplicate this layer over here, go to the bottom one once again, and same thing. We're going to select that path. We're just going to make those edges way bigger. And we're also just going to darken that first color once again, just to make sure that it looks like a casted projection. Now, that's looking great, but I do think that first projection is still pretty big. So let's go ahead and go down into its path, make the start slightly smaller. And if we think it's too strong, we can always tone down its opacity just a tiny little bit. Now, to be fair, looking at this from here, I do think the background is now way too visible. So we're simply going to go over to where our background is, and we can always just tone down the brightness if we want it to be less visible. However, I do think we just need to tone this down by a little bit. So -50 should be more than enough. Real quick, although we've just gotten started on this animation, we've covered some pretty complex After Effects stuff. And if you're a video editor who wants to create more of these high quality animations, mastering After Effects is necessary. We've put together a full A to Z After Effects masterclass where we will teach you everything about the After Effects program in just 2 weeks. This is how optimized our courses are. And this is just one of the many masterclasses we've got waiting for you inside of Ultimate Editors. The link to get access is going to be down below. Now, with all of this stuff done, it's finally time to work on the big part of this whole animation, which is the man falling down. Now, if we go ahead and drag this into After Effects, we could see our falling man icon. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and scale this thing down so that it is in proportion. And before I start working on our icon and everything I want to do with it, first, I want to create those trails that happen behind them. So I'm going to right click and add in a new solid. Just make sure to place it right under our Stickman, and we're going to add in the particle systems effect on it. But the big thing here is we basically just want to parent this solid layer, which contains our particle system effect, to our untitled PNG, which allows us to move this and have the particles move with it. First up, under the physics section, obviously he's falling down, which means the particles need to be floating up. So we're simply going to change the gravity until it is a negative value upwards. Then we're just going to change the animation preset to direction. And we're going to minimize the extra until it seems like it's some realistic particles. By increasing the radius of the X, we can see the particles extend. So I'm going to extend these so that they kind of reach out to where his arms and legs are. And that's when I can minimize the extra value so that we have a trail right behind him. Now, the first thing I notice is there's a lot of particles here. So I'm going to go ahead and tone down the birth rate up until we barely have any particles. And the second thing I notice is that they keep on moving up, and I just want them to kind of die off as they move up, which means we're going to tone down the longevity so that they die off way earlier. Now, obviously, there's still way too many happening, and this is for a few reasons. First up, the velocity here is way too high. So let's go ahead and tone down the velocity to 0.5. It's still a bit too high. Let's go ahead and tone it down to 0.2. Now let's go ahead and extend the longevity so that we can see more of it. The birth rate is still pretty high, so I'm going to tone this down to 0.1. Perhaps the gravity is too strong upwards, so we might need to tone this down to -0.5. That looks a lot nicer. Now we can increase the longevity so that we can see more of them. Let's go ahead and go into the particle and change a few things. I'm going to leave the particle type as a line. However, I'm going to increase its opacity so that we can see it. And I'm simply going to make its birth color a dark black and its death color a white. And now we can finally get to work on the rest of this whole animation. Now, before we start animating and everything, I do want to first stylize things a little bit more. Because if we right click our untitled PNG and we click on layer styles and we add in an inner glow, let's go down over here to inner glow and start by increasing its opacity. Now, if we increase the size a little bit more, you guys can see this creates a very clean effect. I'm going to use the same color as the background, which is a bright green. And what I'm going to do is simply tone down the size and increase the range so that it's barely visible. Let's increase the size a bit more, and then let's tone down the opacity so that it's just such a light glow around the edges that it just simply makes it more realistic. Another thing you can also do is simulate what the light hitting him would look like. All we got to do is add in a light sweep effect. We're going to go ahead and place the center of the light sweep and the center of this bad boy, and we're simply going to orient it so that it's facing the top. Now we just got to increase the width and tone down the sweep intensity to 0. And all I got to do is simply change the color of this white edge to a light green. Now, if we can't see it clear enough, we can always increase the edge intensity intensity and increase the edge thickness if we really want to see it. But there's no need to make it this harsh. We could tone down the edge thickness, tone down the edge intensity just up until we can see it. And there we go. That looks awesome. Now here's the thing. Since this whole icon is a black icon, if we were to add a deep glow to it, only the light values would have the deep glow. But since this is an icon layer, we can't add a deep glow directly to it, or else it's going to be limited by the size of the icon. So we're going to right click and add in an adjustment layer. Then we're simply going to add a deep glow to the adjustment layer over here, and we're simply going to pre-compose it with our icon. Now the thing is, I don't want this to be a strong deep glow. I want it to be a relatively average one. As a matter of fact, I think 0.5 is too strong. 0.3 is way too good. Now we need to parent our black solid, which contains our particle system, to the pre-composition of the icon, which now means wherever we move our pre-composition, the particle system will move with it. All right, now what about making this thing realistically move? So we're gonna go ahead and select our icon over here and go up to our puppet tool and click on this. Now the puppet tool basically allows us to add pins and animate them so we can move parts of our image. So what I'm basically going to do is add a puppet over here for the head, and then I'm going to add a puppet for each of the hands. Then I'm going to add a puppet for the edge of the foot, one for the knee, and one right here in the middle. And this should be all that we need. Now when we add these and we click on new, you guys will see that After Effects automatically places keyframes for where our puppet positions are. And if we go ahead and select one of these and move it around, you guys can see that we can move one part of the body. So how do we animate this thing coming to life? Well, all we got to do is just move a few frames forward, and since we want a rigid, fast animation that reacts with air, everything needs to vibrate a lot. So for the first frame, I'm just going to have his head move forward. I'm going to have the hands move back. We're going to have the body move forward. We're going to have the legs move back. Then for another few frames, we're going to have one of his legs shoot back, his front hand move down. Keep these movements very minimal, by the way. That's a very good piece of advice. This front hand move up, his head move down, and his body move down. Let's move a few more frames forward. We're going to have the body move back up. These hands are going to keep moving up. His head's going to get back. This thing is going to move forward, this thing is going to move back over here, and this thing is going to move back here. And if we watch this in our main composition, it does bring it more life. Let's do this a few more times, and then we're just going to duplicate these keyframes for the rest of it. For this next scene, let's just go ahead and have this thing move forward. Let's have his body shoot back, his leg shoot forward, his head shoot back, his hands both shoot back. Then a few frames forward, hand comes down, head comes down, hand comes up, body goes up, knee comes forward, leg comes forward. So we're going to go ahead and select all these, Control C, Control V over here, and if we watch through this, it should look pretty realistic. All we got to do is now copy this and just paste it another time. Now copy all of these, paste it one more time, copy all of these and paste it one more time. Now we have a realistic air animation, just like so. And this feels like our Stickman is flying through the air. Now real quick, if you're a video editor who wants to master creating high quality animations just like this one and use these skills to land clients and make money as a video editor, then listen up. The real problem is most editors are stuck learning on YouTube. It's unorganized, slow, and gives you no real plan. It's like trying to get fit by watching one random YouTube video, instead of getting a personal trainer with the exact plan you need to get fit. And this is exactly why we built out Ultimate Editors. The complete plan to turn you into a high-level video editor. First, we'll master Premiere Pro and After Effects so that you become an expert at the editing programs. Then, we dive into the viral editing styles of 2025. Josh Leon, Iman Gaji, Devin Jatho, my style, and more. So you're not just another editor, you're the editor which clients actually need. And once your skills are dialed in, we guide you through our 30-day land a client strategy, where we will build out your personal brand and teach you how to turn your edits into high-paying clients. And what makes us different? Well, we update our masterclasses monthly. Just this month alone, we dropped a complete Blender masterclass for video editors, making sure that the editors inside of the Ultimate Editors community are one step ahead of the editing market. And I personally host 3 weekly live calls with our community just to make sure that the editors are constantly improving and moving forward. And our students, they're already making $1,000, $2,000, and even $3,000 with just video editing alone. The thing is, you're already watching a free masterclass like this. So just imagine if you had access to 300 more just like it. Click the link down below and join Ultimate Editors to get access to 300 of the most up-to-date video editing courses on the market. I'll see you guys inside. And now with the background set up, the projections set up, and our Stickman figure set up, this finally means we can move on to the last part of this whole animation, which is creating the Stickman falling down. So let's select our pre-composition, and we're just gonna go ahead and start this pre-composition all the way back at 0 seconds, and we're gonna start it over here at the top of the screen. I'm gonna scale it down real quick before we start this pre-composition, and we're going to add a keyframe for the position. Now what I'm thinking is within the first second, I want this thing to fall down to this position here. We'll put this over a period of 2 seconds, and then in between second seconds 2 and 6, he is going to cover this distance over here. And then between seconds 6 and 8, he is going to fly out of the screen to the bottom. Now, all in all, if we select these and bring them into the speed graph, we should begin to work on the speed of our animations. We're going to simply start this thing relatively slow and then end it fast over here. Now, as this thing is speeding up, I'm going to go ahead, slow down this entry point, and I'm simply going to speed up the exit point over here. And finally, all the way at the end, we're just going to make sure it starts fast and then ends slow. One more key trick, as you guys always know, toggle switches and modes and turn on motion blur for everything. And this is where our animation is going to end. So I'm going to select all of these and click on Ctrl-Shift-D. All right, everything is looking very good. It's finally time to blend this in with some post-production and realism. And the first step of post-production is obviously our camera work. Now, in order to make this camera work very good and high quality, if I were to use an adjustment layer with a transform effect, since everything is 2D layers, we're going to lose a lot of the quality. So in order to fix this, I'm essentially turning everything into a 3D layer. So the first thing I'm going to do is right click and add in my camera. This is going to be a one node camera, and we can go ahead and get started on this. For the first second and a half where our subject is falling in, I'm simply just going to have a camera zoom in over here. Then I'm going to cut my camera right here, and from this point all the way until he falls to the bottom, I'm simply going to have my camera zoom in and track my subject while he's falling down. And then right at the end here, as my camera is down here, I'm just simply going to have my camera track him falling down to the bottom and fade us out of this animation. So for this first scene, I'm simply clicking on P, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more so that we can see what's happening, and place my camera up at the top of the screen. Let's keyframe its current position, move a second and a half in, and just simply add a little bit of a minor zoom in. Now for this section here, I'm simply going to click on P, zoom in all the way until we can see our Stickman over here. And don't worry if it's low quality, I just set the renderer to quarters since my PC is struggling, and simply just keyframe the current position, move all the way down to the bottom, and track him going all the way down to the bottom of the screen. So I'm just going to change a bit of the minor speed, and I'm just going to make sure that we start this thing slightly slower. I'm just going to quickly select this first camera over here, and I like the fact that this thing moves quick right here, and I'm also just going to make sure that the zoom in of the camera is also pretty quick. So to do this, we're selecting both of them, ending it slow, starting it slow, and also just making sure that that peak is right where that playhead is, which is where he moves in. Now to better help transition this first scene over here, I'm going to take the first few seconds as an opportunity to have a glitch fade in for all of our projection, right? This kind of makes it look like the projector light is turning on. So I'm going to take my big shape layer over here, the one that's most obvious, click on T, keyframe its current opacity. I'm going to move back all the way, set it down to 0, then maybe drop it down to something like 30, few frames forward, bump it back up to 78, drop it back down to 0, few frames forward, bring it back up to 100. Then finally, we're just going to end it at the actual opacity, which is 78%. Now I'm just going to go ahead and copy these and basically paste them over here on the opacity as well. The only difference is I'm going to delay them just a little bit and make sure the last one is delayed the most. I'm going to right click and add in a new solid layer and make sure it's black. Now I'm just going to hold down Shift and draw out a huge circle mask. Just click on the mask path and go ahead and move it to the center somewhere around here. Then we're just going to invert it, and we're simply going to keyframe the start of the mask path over here. Then we're going to move a few frames forward and move it all the way up to here. But first we're going to increase our mask feather. Then we're going to select and bring it into our speed graph and make sure it starts fast and then slows down. Then once we get to the end of the animation, we obviously want to fade out. So we're going to keyframe our mask path, move our playhead forward, and just simply move that mask path all the way to the top and have it fade out. And this one is instead going to start slow and end fast. Now I am kind of interested in adding some text over here at the beginning just to add one final touch, and then I'm going to write out the phrase "don't be afraid to fall." Now let's go ahead and place this down over here. Let's go ahead and double click and select the thin font, and let's also add some variation in the distance between the font. Finally, let's select it, click on S and scale it down. And once we're happy with that, we're just going to go ahead and add in the gradient ramp. Let's just make sure that the start is on the top over here and the end is at the bottom. Let's go ahead and swap these colors and set the end color to a gray. Now finally, once our black fade in is done, I'm going to go ahead and move my text forward. Then I'm going to keyframe its opacity, start it at 0%, move forward and bump it up to somewhere around 85-80%. Then we're going to have it fade out to 0% and just make sure we add in another keyframe over here at 80% as well. And now with this done, we can finally get to work on our post-production, which is the last part, by right-clicking and adding in a new adjustment layer on top of everything. The first thing I'm adding in is a CC vignette effect. Now once you add this in, it's barely going to be noticeable, but when you play around with the values, you should be able to see it a bit more. And I'm just going to make sure that this vignette is relatively strong so that we can clearly see it. So something like 190 and an angle of view of 25 should be way better. The second thing I'm doing is duplicating this and deleting the vignette. This time, we're going to be adding in the noise effect. Adding noise to your animation makes them look very, very realistic. I'm simply going to add around 5% of noise, which should give me a very realistic render. 7% is if I really want to go overboard, but I think I'm just going to settle for 5%. Finally, let's duplicate this adjustment layer and delete the noise. Let's use this adjustment layer to add in the Gaussian blur effect and increase it by something like 15 or maybe even 20. Now I'm going to use my ellipse tool to draw out a mask right in the middle here, which masks my Gaussian blur only to the mask, but I'm actually going to invert it, click on F and increase the mask feather to 100. This is going to give us a blur around the edges like this, which makes it look even better. And finally, to add our cinematic bars, this is the best part. We're going to right click and add in a solid black layer. Then we're simply going to use our rectangle tool to draw out a rectangle right in the middle like this with even edges and invert it so that we get the two cinematic bars up top and at the bottom. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen, this finalizes our whole animation. We end up with this very, very cinematic falling animation. Now you can obviously use this in a video, you can use it in an edit, you can actually post it, show people your animation skills, and actually get clients from stuff like this. And if you guys enjoyed this, just know there are 300 plus more video editing courses just like the one that you just watched inside of Ultimate Editor. So if you're a video editor who wants to master video editing, learn the viral editing styles of 2025 and learn to create animations like these and how to make money with video editing in the 2025 editing market, then you should check out Ultimate Editors. The first link, it's going to be the first link down in the description below. And all in all, this being said, thank you so much guys for watching all the way till the end of the video. If you guys enjoy this new format of videos, just let me know down below. And if you don't, also please let me know down below. I'm going to go ahead and see you guys in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching all the way till the end. God bless all of you guys and stay tuned for our next animation.